Hi everybody, welcome to our webinar, Making Money in the New Normal. First of all, big thank you to Blackheath Rugby Club, who we're running this with jointly. Big thank you to Russell Ticehurst, Managing Director of Blackheath Rugby Club, who was supposed to be hosting and introducing all of this. As you can see, I have the same hairstyle as Russell. For those of you that know him, he's about a foot taller than me. And I was slightly worried when he asked me if I could stand in this morning that he was talking about his position in the back row of the over 50s. But we are A4G, a firm of chartered accountants in West Kingsdown. I know one or two of you watching will know who we are. And we're all broadcasting from our homes, so any technical glitches, you'll hopefully forgive us. So I'll just quickly introduce you to my colleagues who are going to be presenting today. The first one is Josh Curtis. He is one of our partners, and he'll be talking about getting ready to make money in the new normal and what your new real break-even point is. The second part of the presentation will be by our Deputy Managing Partner, Emma White, and she's going to run through some of the cash flow issues that you might be having at the moment, a few solutions, and the importance of cloud accounting. And then at the back end, we'll come back to me again, and I'm going to run through some sort of easy sales and marketing strategies, the sort of stuff you can do which won't cost a fortune, and then the importance of putting together a strategic plan for your business, and how you do it and get the best from that. So hopefully everybody is online now and we're ready to go. If I ask my colleague Josh Curtis to just unmute himself, and there's Josh.
Everybody.
And I think as soon as he starts speaking, I will disappear off the screen and Josh will begin. So I'll see you in a bit.
Hopefully you can see my screen now. Hello everyone. I'm Josh. As Malcolm said, I'm one of the partners here at A4G. I've had the dubious title over the last few months of being our resident furlough expert. But today I want to sort of take it beyond furlough and talk about the recovery. As Saturday is, everything is supposedly being unlocked unless you're unfortunate enough to be in Leicester, so that the majority of businesses can start getting back to work. Obviously, there are some that are still stuck, unable to trade, and some where demand is perhaps a little bit behind where you would want it to be. And others are experiencing a peak in demand where there's a lot of pent-up work for them to do, and so things are very different over the next couple of weeks, and we don't know how sustainable this change in demand will be and where it will get to. But what I want to try and do is bring this back down to something that we can all control. So obviously at the moment, we're probably all looking at different aspects of our business. How much demand have we got for our services? What's our capacity? Can we fit all our staff back in? Are we able to bring all our staff back off furlough? How many people are willing to come off furlough? Who's shielding? Who's looking after elderly relatives? Who's got issues with childcare? All of those things are all creating a headache for all of us as business owners as to what we do as our next step. But one of the things that can get a bit forgotten in thinking about all of this is how much do you as the business owner need to live on? So I just want to run through a little exercise you can do, and one that we help many of our clients do, which turns the way that you look at your figures on its head. And we call it the real break-even point. This is the point where your business has enough turnover to generate enough profit for you to draw what you need as a business owner to cover your living costs. So the starting point for this is to look at what are your monthly personal lifestyle costs. It often surprises me, probably because I'm an accountant, that a lot of business owners don't actually know how much they need to draw every month to sustain their lifestyle. It might be because their costs are spread between different buckets of where the cash is held. Sometimes the business might be paying some of their personal costs and they don't intend it to. And sometimes it might just be because the drawings are sporadic. But understanding how much you need every month to get by and to provide for, I would say that holiday you want to take every year, but at the moment, I'm not sure any of us are planning on holidays that are particularly frivolous. But all these things add up, and having an idea of what that figure is an important starting point. And so the next thing you do is then work out how much of that income is derived from your business. You may have some rental properties, you may have some passive income from investments, but you then need to look at how much of this income do you need your business to provide. And then when business has provided that income, how much of that is taxed? Now, I'm not going to go into how you gross up your net drawings at the moment, because that could be quite complicated. It depends entirely on how you're structured. So we'll jump that hurdle. That's something that we do as part of our sessions that we do with clients to work out their break-even point. And we'll jump straight to saying, right, let's assume that if you've got a limited company, you take a director's salary, which we will ignore for the fact of this exercise, and we'll just look at, right, I need to draw £30,000 of dividends every year to cover my lifestyle costs. Okay, so then we put that into the profit and loss report here. And now most people and most accountants would start at the top. So we'd look at sales and then work our way down, look at the cost of sales and analyze things as we go down. But instead of doing that, in this, we look at it the other way around. We say, right, I need to get £30,000 out of this business. So therefore, I have to make £30,000 of profit after tax. So on the basis that this is a limited company and tax is at 19%, we can quickly gross that up. So we say, okay, in this company before tax, you need to have made £37,000. So before I know anything about the company that you may run, we know that that's the amount of profit you need to get the drawings that you require. So then we need to look at, okay, what are your overheads? Now, usually for this exercise, we would look at the historic figures. So we probably would take an average of the last 3 to 5 years and work out what your overheads are on an average on that basis, because obviously they can fluctuate year on year. But I would say at the moment, the historic figures probably would indicate overheads higher than you're going to have going forwards, because as we went into this crisis, the majority of businesses started cutting back on their overhead expenditure. Now, you may find some of those things you need to turn back on, but some things may have gone forever. So I've got clients who have now completely cancelled the lease for their offices and are now operating completely as a remote business, as a sort of an online business, I suppose. And that makes a big difference to your overheads. I've got other clients who are downsizing and some where they've just changed the nature of all those overheads. They've been pretty strict with what they've cut out. So therefore, it might be better to look at what are your expectations for your overhead costs? What are your office costs, staffing costs? Who are your essential suppliers that you're going to need to make sure you look after? And then also, what are the costs of finance? So finance is at quite a low point, with the Bank of England rate being so low at the moment, and a lot of effectively free borrowing available at the moment, but that won't last forever. And if you've got a bounce back loan, for example, then you're going to start paying I think it's 2.5% off the top of my head, as it will be from next year. So that sort of needs to factor into your future calculations for this. But once you've got that number, you add all those things together, and that gives you your cost of capacity. So your overheads effectively are, this is how much I need to spend on all of my overhead costs to enable my business to go out and generate the income that it needs to generate. So we'd call that the cost of capacity. So in this case, we'll just say, to keep the numbers easy, that your overheads are 30,000. So then the next step is to look at how much your business needs to generate from its sales after costs. So as we need to generate a profit before tax of 37,000, our overheads are 30,000, you just add the two together, and that says that the contribution of your sales, so your sales less the cost of sales, needs to be £67,000. So here is where we reach the point where things can get a little bit tricky as to how you allocate things in your bookkeeping. This is why I like to concentrate with my clients about what we're declaring as a cost of sale and what we're declaring as an overhead. In theory, your overheads will always be very stepped. So your capacity will be here, and then you'll go, I actually am creaking at the seams, but I've got more work out there. I need to increase my capacity in the office, and you'll jump up a step, and then you'll be able to increase your sales. With cost of sales, it's got a more direct relationship with your amount of turnover. So the classic example would be if you have a service business and you have self-employed labor, so you have a job, you give it to someone, and if they're not working on the job, then they're not costing you anything. That's directly comparable to your turnover. Now, in reality, most businesses have some employees who are their cost of sales employees, so they're your fee earners effectively. Or it could be that you're buying products and those product costs will become your cost of sales. And obviously products, it's a little bit easier to compare. Okay, if I'm selling product X, what's the cost of product X? That gives me my gross profit. Some people call gross profit contribution. And the idea is that once you've made a sale, you take away the cost of making that sale, and that then gives you your margin, which is your contribution to your overheads and profits. I quite like the word contribution because it reflects truly what that's trying to do. So here we would look at your past performance from your accounts to see what's your normal gross profit percentage. Now, this might be a blend of, you might have different products or services that you sell, and each product or service may have a different margin that you're making. But usually in a course of a year, you make a blend of those that's going to be roughly similar. Going forwards, of course, things might be different. There might be services that you're providing now that could be very different to what you're used to selling. You may be exploring new markets with everything that's going on, or it may be that some aspect of your business just won't happen again and you're just going to cut your losses on that service or product and move on to other things. So it could vary, but the starting point is to look at your historic gross profit margin. That's something that we always make a note of in the year-end accounts as well. And so once you've got your gross profit margin, you can then calculate the rest of this. So let's say that your gross profit margin is 35%. So every time you make a sale, you've costed it so that 35% of that sale goes as a contribution to the rest of the figures in the business. So if that's the case, we know we need to have a gross profit of £67,000, and that gross profit is 35% of the total sales. We can then calculate, okay, to get that gross profit figure, sales have to be 191,000, and the cost of sales based on that will be 124,000. So here, working from our dividends figure, we've worked all our way up to turnover. Now, of course, we haven't looked at the reality here. We've looked at the reality of your overheads and we've looked at the reality of your profit margin, but what we haven't done is looked at the reality of your turnover. So now what we can do is this effectively gives you a turnover target. And you can compare this to your financial reports. And so you can say, actually, are we hitting this level of turnover? And if your turnover is above this and your gross profit margin is about the same, about 35%, then green line, you're earning more than you need to for your lifestyle costs as the business owner. And you can then start to make decisions with that. Okay, we've got a bit of extra profit here. Do we therefore invest that in growing the business? Do I therefore take this as an opportunity to top up my pension or take an extra drawing? On the other side of things, if your turnover from the break-even calculation is a figure higher than you're actually achieving, then you might have a problem. You're not generating enough turnover at the right margin in order to generate enough income for you and your lifestyle costs. And of course, at the end of the day, as business owners, although we're in this for the love of our businesses, and a lot of people I speak to are incredibly passionate about their businesses, at the end of the day, it boils down to, is this business earning enough for you to have a living? And so that's why I think this can be a really important tool for allowing you to relate the performance of the business to what it means to you. So with the turnover, you can then divide that down and work that out into, okay, I can get a monthly target. We've got clients who actually calculate a daily takings target. So they can actually work out, if we take this much per day, we will be okay at the end of the year. And if they miss it, they know they need to catch it up in the next day. So this is the starting point. So it's a very simple calculation here, and you can then make it as complicated as you like from here so that you get some manageable targets that can mean something to your figures. So you can use this as targets for your overheads, targets for your cost of sales, targets for your margins. So you can review every month, are we making the margins that we think we are? And if your margin's not quite what you're expecting it to be, you can compare it to here. Likewise, we can also do a seasonally adjusted break-even analysis where your turnover and costs may not run at 1/12 every month. There may be months where it's higher and months where it's lower. And it's really important to flex your break-even calculation to to adapt to that. Otherwise, you might think you've had a really good month when really that's always a really good month because that's your biggest sales month of the year. But how does that compare to what you would historically expect it to be? That gives you a more accurate basis to test it on, rather than thinking, right, I've really smashed turnover, let's draw some extra money out, and then you find actually by the end of the year you haven't been breaking even. So this all feeds into some really practical targets that you can set for your business, so that you're not just setting arbitrary sales targets, and you can engage with what those targets mean, because you know that every penny saved on it is a penny that goes into that, either the retained earnings to invest in the business, or that you can invest or draw as the business owner. So I've talked about how we would generate those targets, and I'm now going to hand over to my partner, Emma, who is going to talk a little bit more about how those targets and exercises can then feed into how you would then feed that into your bookkeeping, how you then track it, and then talk about the finance and things around it. So Emma, if you're ready, are you there? See if this works.
I am indeed.
Oh, perfect.
You start sharing my screens.
You can
Hello,
steal
everyone.
the screen.
Yeah, I've just stolen your screen. There we go. Lovely. Right, hello everyone. I'm Emma White. I'm one of the partners at A4G. I've been at A4G for 20 years. So one of my current sort of extra roles within the business is actually to head up our cloud accounting department, which looks at streamlining finances and cash flow planning and management accounts for businesses. So I thought I'd talk you through some of the tools that we use to do that and what my recommendation would be at the moment. So for many of you, you will be coming to a pinch point. Now, you might be sort of 6 to 12 months away from that, but there's certainly, for a lot of businesses, there's debts building. And I think Q4 of this year and Q1 of next year are going to be really, really vital to ensure that you've got the right planning in place. Obviously, one of the first things to kick in is where the wages are starting to come out of furlough for some of the staff, and you've got to start building that back into your budget or making redundancies, which all have costs to them. Obviously, you might have supplier payments to catch up on, but particularly there's personal tax debt that might have been rolled over with the July payment on account, being able to defer that. Well, obviously, you've got to catch that up by the 31st of January. There's also the old PAYE debt, and there's a quarter of VAT if you've used that to be caught up within the first quarter of Q1. And then obviously for any of you that have taken bounce back loans or some of the other sort of deferral schemes, Q2 and 3 of next year, you're going to have to start making repayments on those. So as you can see, I'm quite conscious that we make sure that our clients are well planned for this period, because it's going to be a little bit scary, I think, for some businesses if they're not doing the right type of cash flow planning. So one of the tools we use for a lot of our clients is called the 5-minute cash flow, and it just gives you a real snapshot of what cash you should have set aside at the moment. So you'd look at all your balances you've got in the bank and your overdraft limit to tell you how much kind of available funds you've got at the minute, and then you'd look at what bills need to be accrued. So how much money should you set aside for all the bits that are coming up? So that's VAT, company tax, your rent, and it takes into account the intervals of payments. And then all of that comes up with a debt for sort of whether you're in front or behind in terms of what you should have set aside at the moment. It's not unusual for businesses to be kind of trading by using their cash flow from sort of corporation tax for the current period, but you certainly need to have an awareness of at what point is this all going to become due, and it will cause a cash flow dip for you. So, you know, if you're doing that sort of thing on a month by month basis, you can really build a picture of your cash flow trends, because you find a lot of businesses do have cash flow trends, and you do have some form of seasonality, even if that's just where it tends to die down over the summer holidays or Christmas period. So it's really good to see that pattern building up. Now, obviously, next, I would look to really streamline your finances to ensure that you are getting up-to-date information at your fingertips as soon as possible, just so that you can trust the decisions you've got to make at the moment. We're in a very uneasy world where regular turnover cannot be trusted. So it is important to have that information, which is why we absolutely champion cloud accounting, which has bank feeds, and you can upload your purchase invoices into almost instantly, rec your bank daily, and just have this information at your fingertips. So obviously these would be my tips on how you streamline your finances. You've got to look up speeding up invoicing, making it as easy as possible for people to pay you. And that would be talking about the payment process all the way through your sales process. So that's right from engagement of clients, onboarding, placing orders, and closing the sale, and then following up that quickly. Obviously, you've got to be super hot on your credit control at the moment, because you might have been given credit limits for people that you're working with, but they're likely to be old credit limits, and there's a lot has happened in sort of the last 3 months. But also that credit limit is a credit limit that a lot of people might allow those companies to trade up to. So they could have a lot of debt behind the scenes at the moment that you're not aware of. So you've just got to be really hot on this stuff. And then obviously you've got to be talking to everyone in your supplier chain about how do you improve sort of cash flow between you all. You've got to be negotiating with your suppliers. You've got to be looking at time to pay arrangements for things, particularly if you're just sort of back up and trading now. And it's important just to be honest and transparent with people. So we would use cloud accounting software to really speed up that invoice and payment process. So you'd look at sort of, the product we champion is Xero, just because it's so affordable and it just is a cut above the rest really for an accounts package. We work with all of the accounts packages, but this is really the one both us and our customers prefer. So we'd look at getting a template online that you can sort of invoice on the go from your phone, tablet, and you can get those invoicings done on a regular basis, because traditionally invoicing can be left till the end of the month or when cash flows tight. Then the invoices have got to be typed up, sent out in the post, and all those things cause delay. And I don't think really any businesses can afford those delays at the moment. Then we would look at linking to sort of online payment methods and just making it really, really easy for people to find the details to pay you. So you don't want that stuff to be hidden. And then we'd look at automating some of your basic debt chasing. So the reason we like Xero is because it's not just an accounting package on its own designed for us. It's really the first part of a business suite that is designed for business owners, where you can bolt in all sorts of different add-ons. So one of the add-ons we like for credit control is Fluidly, and that looks at allowing you to bespokely design all your basic chasing. So that might be a little message a few days before something's due with a statement saying, just to let you know, can you make sure this is on your payment run for this week? And then again, very polite, then, oh, that missed the deadline, can you just make sure you've got it on your system? And then obviously you can escalate that to the point that the idea is everyone that's going to pay you quickly and properly will pay you without you having to sort of involve a lot of time invested in that. And it frees whoever's doing your credit control up to make those more difficult calls to people that maybe you are a bit worried about or you need to talk to about payment plans. And the reason we like Fluidly is it's actually got kind of a cash flow forecasting tool off the back of it, which allows you to see what income you're expecting based on the patterns of your customer and suppliers. So for each individual customer, they will have an average number of days that they pay you on. And this software takes that into account. So it's not a case of, oh, well, we will assume all our customers pay within 30 days as we've asked them. It really will forecast the patterns based on those customers and then prioritize your sort of credit control to show you what's the most important thing. So it's a really, really fabulous tool that we've found that works for some of our clients. Then obviously you look to improve the efficiency of your purchase ledger. So that would be automating how the data bank feeds are all linked to your software, that you can do expense claims really easily on your phone, and that you've just got a bit more consistency about where things are posted on your system, so that should you need it, you can go in and run through these things and just see where your costs are building up and if costs aren't as expected. So some of the things that we bolt into Xero for the purchase ledger side would be Receipt Bank, which is like an invoice capturing system where you can either take photos, you can scan, you can forward email invoices, or you can use their fetch function. So some of the bigger suppliers, you can just put in your account details and it'll go and fetch those invoices for you into the software. Now it means obviously you've got a PDF copy attached to that transaction, so you don't need to go and hunt through a file if you want to find out what one of your suppliers is charging you. If you need to do a bit of an audit on your costs, it's all there. So it's really, really useful. And then we partner that with Approval Max, which is if you've got a business that needs multi-level approval on either sales invoices. And all of these things can be done on the go from your phone. So you just keeps everything moving. And particularly where I think we're going back into a business world where no one really wants to touch stuff, it just really helps that flow. But I think you've also got to bear in mind that you'll have staff coming back part-time, and if something's sitting on their desk, it's going to delay the whole process of your finances, which I just don't think businesses can afford nowadays. So to really get ahead of sort of your competition and really get to grips with your business, for a lot of you will have an idea about where your profit is generated, but sometimes it's really hard to fit that into what your accounts are telling you, particularly if you're only having financial information given to you maybe 6 months after the year end, when that's such historic information you don't really know what to do with it. So using the cloud accounting tool, there's some really easy to edit formatted reports. And you can look at three-way reporting, so you can track your sales and cost of sales or all your purchases either by division or sales driver. So you can really hone in on where you are making your profits and where you should invest your efforts. Then you can look at month-to-month comparisons, actual to budgets. And so for any of you that have run some of your predicted figures at the moment, and you've got these little forecasts because you know what you need to be doing to break even or bring those certain members of staff back, one of the things I would say to all of my clients is get those budgets in to your software and then use those to compare to what's actually happening in the month. And then you can get a really good feel for what's going on. And also there's the prior year report, which is quite good, kind of in a normal trading period, you can compare this July to last July. And actually for some of my clients, this has been really useful at the moment, because I think you're listening to the news and sometimes sort of for your business and your business economy, things aren't as bad as you're expecting. So it just avoids any surprises, but it gives you all these different views on your business that you wouldn't have if you were using Excel or manual records. And then Xero's also got a function which is projects, where you can actually job cost and compare those to actuals. So you can track your costs as things are going, which I think is particularly important at the moment, because many businesses and their sales team might be a little bit nervous about sales at the moment, and they might be tempted to sort of undercut or cut margins a bit, sort of inflated, where certain types of materials are harder to come by. You might be having to use lots of different suppliers, or the cost of PPE stuff that can have an impact on margins. So that allows you to track your margin as you're going, and just highlight any problems before they there's nothing you can do to affect them. So then once you've got on top of what cash flow position is now, you've looked at streamlining your finances as much as possible so you can really keep on top of your numbers. Then obviously you need to be looking at sort of more detailed cash flow planning and forecasting. So what would I do now to have a little sort of play with your cash flow? Well, there are all sorts of little grants available. I mean, many of you might have had grants for the rates and things, but there's also like little pockets of money in certain local authorities for businesses that consider themselves to have been worse affected than others. And you can make those individual applications. So it is worth speaking to your local authority and see if there's anything else that's available, because everything was sort of trickling out. But also, one of the big things for our clients is research and development claims. Now, I think for a lot of businesses, you assume research and development is kind of medical or tech mainly, but actually, if there's anything you are doing, you are solving problems that couldn't be solved by a different bit of equipment or whatever you're using at the time, then that would fall under the research and development. So it is worth, if you've got a little bit more time on your hands now, or cash flow's tight, just having those conversations about, you know, and thinking back over the jobs you've been doing over the last few years. You know, have you had to sort of really brainstorm a problem and maybe adapt things that could qualify? And it doesn't have to have been successful. And I think that often it's the unsuccessful research and development that we all forget about, because no one likes failure. So if we can't solve a problem, you tend to try and put it to the back of your mind and pretend it didn't happen. But there, you know, there's some really, really good money to be had back on that. And also for many of you, you'll have been talking to your banks already about the lending. So you really need to know your current position, but then there are some additional sort of planning tools that can bolt into cloud accounting software like Float that we work with our clients that are really good scenario planning tools. So that can be, like, what would happen if I had to put my prices up 5% just because of the cost of goods, and what would happen if I lost 20% of my customers, you know, and you can really see quite quickly with our help all those different options and scenarios really. And it might be that you're looking to do an acquisition, but you can build this stuff up so that you know the avenues that you might need to be concerned about and what might be a sort of scary point for you as a business. Now, obviously, I have banged on a little bit about Xero. It is something that I absolutely love, but it's got tons of add-ons that are all industry specific. So it really is just a starting point for a suite of tools for your business to really help you improve your sort of customer experience, to improve workflows internally, and give you more insight into your customers. So what we do at A4G is, for a lot of businesses, we've given personalised demos to them on how we think sort of any of the cloud accounting softwares can benefit what they're doing at the moment. We do setup and training, which is bespoke to individual businesses, and that might involve one or maybe a few different elements of the people's business coming in, and that might be just for a cloud accounting or for a number of the add-ons that we champion. But also we can do bespoke report design. But for some of our businesses where they've struggled or they've lost a key member of the finance team, we've put together scoping documents where we'll look at their business as a whole and how we could use some of these technologies to really sort of drive the business forward. So we'd produce a scoping document for them with all the options available and work through it just to give them a real hand. So if any of you do want to talk to us about any of that, feel free to drop us an email or give us a call. All right, well, I will hand over to Malcolm now. Malcolm, you there?
I'm here. Sorry, started speaking before I'd unmuted myself. Let me just share the screen. Hopefully you can all see the, no, won't be able to see it yet, too quick. Yeah, hopefully you can all see the sales and marketing strategies. So I'm the managing partner at A4G. One of my responsibilities as managing partner is to oversee the marketing side of the business. And that's enabled me to sort of help develop various techniques that work for clients. I know you haven't all got massive marketing budgets that you can pay expensive external people to come in and do stuff, but there's simple stuff that you can do. So the first thing that you need to think about is just getting your strategy right. And before you do anything, one of the key things is to ensure that you've got a database. Now, I've seen the worst example of a database that I've seen was just a notice board with loads of business cards pinned to it. Other times it's just in the phone of the owner of the business. And what that means is that people don't have access to that information remotely. Only one person has got access to it. And it's so silly when there are loads of these little database programs out there that are designed to help you with your sales and are really cheap to use. One or two of them will actually link in with Xero as well. So I know Emma's got some standard recommendations on that if you wanted to ask about in the Q&A. So the next thing is you've got this database where you're going to keep all your potential customer details in. Then you've got to think about how you're going to capture all of that information. So, the first thing is just get all those business cards, get all that information off people's phones and just bung it all in there, get it tidied up, try and get email addresses where you can, but then think about the new stuff. So whenever you speak to a potential customer, what's your process afterwards? Do you give that information across to an admin person who then knows how to put it into the database, or does it just get lost forever? So we're ready to go now. And the next thing you just need to think about is which of the 3 main marketing strategies are right for you. So we'll start with the one that's probably most fashionable at the moment, which is what we call inbound. So inbound is stuff that you do that brings business to you. In the old days, people of my age would be more familiar with spending quite a bit of money on advertising, whether that's yellow pages or magazines, whatever it is. People are going to find out about your business and then they're going to ring you up. Obviously, we've moved on from that significantly now. The number one thing, of course, is going to be Google. You want people to find your website, and Google is going to be the way. And one of the most critical elements of that is to understand that over 50% of searches that are done are local, as in they will put in the name of a town, a county, depends how big your industry is really, but if you're looking for an accountant in West Kingsdown, you'll probably put in accountant West Kingsdown, and with a bit of luck, A4G will come up top. So, but for your website to be found, it's got to have all the right terms in there. So you need to think heavily about your content. The sort of things that people are going to type into the search engine are those words that appear regularly within your website. If you're not on the first page when somebody does a search on Google, it's almost certainly they will not find you. So the second aspect is that the Google algorithm is constantly changing, is quite complicated, and as a website designer told me, this is a bit of a black art, but there are a few things that you need to get right. So make sure that your content is good, that it's being updated, that it's not being copied from somewhere, because you'll get black marks for that, and that will help. If your website hasn't been changed for 3 years, you are slowly slipping down the rankings. Even just a small change to change the date or extra few words will recognise it as a new page. The next thing is, what will a potential customer find? Is that a good reflection of what your business's values are and who you are? And then if they find that page, it might not be your homepage that they land on first, it might be a page within your site. Is there a call to action? What do they do? Is there an inquiry box on there? Is there a phone number? If they read some article or a bit of information, they get to the bottom, what does it tell them to do? Call to actions are critical. And one of those call to actions I mentioned in the inquiry box should help you with that data capture, because maybe people are going to type something in and that information will then go back and will be updated in your database. Potentially to get them to do that, you might need to give something away for free. So, all good websites give stuff away for free, and that's just a way of getting you to put your details in. Now, the last element of inbound is, of course, social media. And I've deliberately put a question mark against that, because everybody thinks that's the be all and end all. But of course, it all depends on what sort of business you're in. And lots of people waste huge amounts of money on marketing in social media when it's not the most appropriate method for them. If you're selling something that's very visual, then you should be getting yourself on Instagram. If you're selling something which is a very local type service, then Facebook is a great medium. If you're a professional and you're looking for other professionals, then LinkedIn is a good medium. And we've got all those others as well. We could talk about this for hours, but you've got to find the right medium or the right mediums for you. And that, it's important that your business has an inbound marketing strategy. The second part, which is sort of an optional choice, is do you have an outbound marketing strategy? Now, outbound is where you are going out and finding your customers. That could be somebody knocking on doors, that could be mail shots, e-shots, telemarketing, all of those things where you are actually in control of the process and you are contacting those other people. That can be quite hard work. It's not the sort of thing that everybody can do, because it can be quite demoralizing if they're constantly getting knockbacks. But that might work. Some of these things work quite well together. So get a mail shot out first, or maybe an e-shot, and then follow it up with a telephone call. So it's not a complete cold call. And make sure when you're doing that, you're constantly updating the data. So if you send out a mail shot and 10 of them come back as not known at this address, you get them off your database and save them postage money going forward. And then the last thing, almost certainly, you will all have a referral marketing strategy of some kind. And many of the businesses that we work with, who sort of can jog along from year to year, doing a similar turnover, growing a bit, are growing because of referrals. And and as long as you're good at what you do, you will get referrals. But there's stuff that you can do to encourage those referrals. So just simply asking your customers for referrals. There's an easy way of doing that. When you finish the job, contract, you just go out of your way to ring them up and say, are you happy with what we did? Was everything okay? Is there anything you can improve? Obviously, if they just sort of tell you a whole litany of things you've got wrong, then that's good research, and you need to go back and do something about it. But if generally speaking, they're happy with what you've done, then you should be saying to them that business is good, but we're hungry for more. We're looking to grow, particularly in the current climate. If there's anyone else that you know that would benefit from what we do, please recommend them. The other part of referral marketing, which most businesses ignore, is the complementary referral marketing. So it's finding somebody in a complementary field. Maybe it's something where they just simply have the same customers as you do. So could be a coach travel business that does lots of trips to parts of the UK, and a financial services company. They both provide a service to the grey market, should we say, similar customers, completely different in what they do, but there is a potential for referral there. Maybe a closer link might be two professionals whose work slightly overlaps. So, particularly within the building industry, there'll be bits of work. Is it done by the plumbing contractor? Is it done by the electrical contractor? One picks up after the other, and you can refer each other in. Within the professions, solicitors, accountants, financial advisors, loads of opportunities for referral. So, a lot of people put a huge amount of effort into asking other people to refer them, but don't put any effort into actually referring that other person. So, the way that this stuff works, and I know if you're a member of BNI or one of those networking groups, you'll probably be familiar with this, but, it's putting the onus on you to try and recommend other people, and in return, they should recommend you back. So those are the three aspects of it: inbound, outbound, referral, and you should probably have a little bit of all of those, but focus on the one that you think is going to be the best for you. So you've got the lead. Now you need to just turn it into a sale, and there's I mean, I've read a few sales books. I don't know how many of you have read sales books, but I think after I've read my 4th sales book, I realised that despite the fact that the covers were all different and the thickness of the books were different and all the terms were different, actually the content was exactly the same, because there's just 4 stages. Preparation. So make sure that if you're going to meet a potential customer, or if perhaps a potential customer may just turn up at your premises unannounced because they walk in the door, that you are ready for that. If you know who you're meeting, you can do some research on them, check out their website, just find out some of the basic details that's available out there. Make sure you've got a business card, brochure, whatever stuff you need to impress them. And once, so you're prepared for the sale, the next part is what we call the needs analysis. So, or even the needs and wants analysis. And that should be just asking questions. So initially, that will just be some very general questions, and then you start to move on to some more specific ones. So within our accountancy practice, because we do a lot of different things for clients, try and help them in a real holistic way, you know, over the years, I just naturally say to somebody, first time I meet them, how's business? And often they will start telling me a whole load of information that is going to be relevant to how I might help them. Occasionally, you may meet somebody who you think is a potential customer. Well, once you've asked all of those questions, you realise actually there isn't any way that you can help them. And actually there's another professional that they need. So, you know, occasionally somebody's got a problem and we might be able to help, but actually then it might be that they really need to get a lawyer involved, or maybe worse, you know, an insolvency practitioner. So at that point, you know, it's important that you pass them to the most appropriate person, you know, and that fits back in with referral marketing. And I think that gives you a lot of credibility rather than the whole pushy salesman thing when people are trying to sell something that the buyer doesn't even want. But assuming that you have identified some needs or wants that you can fill, then the next thing is the solutions presentation. So this is actually explaining to them how you are going to solve that problem for them, meet that need, meet that want, or whatever. And once you've done that, the final thing is to close. And a lot of people find that uncomfortable. A friend of mine, his closing technique has been the same for the last 25 years. He just says, so do you want it or not? And he tells me that he's only been a handful of people have ever been offended by him asking them that question. There's lots of different ways of closing, and it's better to just ask an outright question rather than dancing around the houses for the next 3/4 of an hour, both of you feeling increasingly uncomfortable. If there's reasons why they're not ready to buy now, or it's not a suitable product for them, you know, get them on your database, then they'll get the e-shots and, you know, go back to some other forms of marketing. Quite possibly they might actually refer you across to somebody else, even if they don't want to buy it, they know somebody who does. So, you know, it's almost selling by being nice, finding out what people want, seeing if you can provide it for them. So that's simple stuff, really. You know, accountants are terrible at this stuff, and so are many other professions. But you don't need to be highly trained in sales to be a good salesperson. You need to be good at what you do. You need to know your product. You need to have an interest in the people that are your potential customers, and business will come to you, even in the current climate. So. The final part of our webinar is just how we pull everything that Josh has gone through and Emma's gone through and I've talked about, you know, a whole load of other issues into what we would call a strategic plan. Now, I've done quite a lot of these strategic planning sessions over the years. Some of them are actually a whole day when you get the owners of the business together. You know, that might just be one person. It could be a husband and wife, or it could be, I think, biggest one I've done was 5 directors. We started about 8 in the morning and finished about 7:30 in the evening, because there was sort of argued about everything, but it was actually a really successful day. And the key 4 parts to strategic planning are: where do you want to be in 2 years' time? Now, previous to the pandemic, I would have said, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? But that's just too long a period of time. So pick a time when we're going to be out the other end of this. So what sort of turnover do you want to be doing? What level of profit? How much involvement you will have in the business? What things you will have achieved in that time? Get a vision, positive vision of where you want to be in 2 years' time. The next question is, where are you now? Now, the best answer I've ever had to that was somebody who just said, complete and utter bloody shambles, Malcolm. And it came as a bit of a surprise to me because we worked with them, on the accountancy and financial side of things, and they were really well organised on that. But as they sort of explained the day-to-day realities of what they did, they were, I realised that they were indeed a complete utter bloody shambles. So we've got this vision where we want to go. We know where we are now. As a result of the pandemic, that might be in the poo, but or it might be creeping out there, or it might be just a bit disorganised. Whatever it is, we know where we are now. We know where we want to go. The next thing to ask is, what do you need to do to get from where you are now to where you want to be? Now, a lot of business owners, they sort of know that, but some of the things that they might say might be a bit unrealistic. So our role as a facilitator, just to challenge some of those points and the practicalities of what they need to do, and also just drill down into some of the detail. And finally, to actually drill down into some of the small things that, because they haven't done those yet, are stopping them from doing something much bigger. Because the last part of this is, what's stopping you from doing those things? It could be hours in the day, it could be cash flow, it could be the size of your premises, or I doubt that's an issue at the moment, but identifying those limiting factors that are stopping you from doing the things that will get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And that, in essence, is a strategic planning session. So we've pulled all this together. All this sort of stuff we've been doing for years, but over the last few months, we've developed what we've called the A4G Breakthrough and Recovery Program, and we've just pulled together a range of support that we give into something which is, we think is an ideal help program to get businesses through the next 12, 18, 24 months really. The elements to that are identifying your real break-even point and what we call your annual daily turnover. So how much sales you need to make every single day in order to hit that break-even point. Create a profit improvement plan and some targets for you. Streamline the financial processes using a lot of the things that Emma's talked about. Much better quality reporting so you really understand where your business is and how it's doing on a month-by-month basis. Start to address some of those short and medium-term cash flow challenges. Build a sales and marketing strategy that's practical and works for you. Develop a strategic plan for the business. And then basically over the next 12, 18, 24 months, just provide you with all the support and focus and nudges to keep going in the right direction. So the next steps really, I know many of you get our nightly emails. We were doing 7 a week for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the pandemic. We've dropped that down to 3 now, but we're trying to get everything we can out to our clients, to all our subscribers, just whatever help we can give them to get through the current situation. If you'd like details of the Breakthrough Recovery Program, then you can just email one of the 3 of us and we'll send that to you. So I hope you've enjoyed everything. I can see on my monitor that Russell is here. Hopefully he didn't hear what I said about him earlier, or I'm in a bit of trouble. If he'd like to unmute himself, and then we'll let him say hello.
Hello, Malcolm.
How's Russell?
How are you? I'm very sorry to everybody, but work is starting again, so work must take precedent, I'm afraid.
No problem. So
yeah. I'll find out. I'll find out what you said, Malcolm. Don't worry.
No problem. All right. Now I'm going to try and click on the questions and answers, which for some reason I can't see on my screen at the moment. If my partners want to come back online, maybe if I stop sharing, perhaps that'll do the answer. Aha, there we are. Questions and answers. All right. So, got one or two questions that have been asked here. What do I do if I have too many staff? Josh, did you want to? I'm assuming that this is to do with people coming back off of furlough.
So yeah, it's a very depends on the scenario. So I think the first thing to do is you need to have accurate information from your finances, a good idea of what work you think is coming forwards, so that you can, I gather you'd have that to be able to work out if you have too many staff or not. And then it would probably be a good idea to have a chat with us, because there's lots of different options for what you might need to do in that case. So you might need to look at your staff base to see if you need to give people new positions, if there's things you can move people around so that you don't have to do the dreaded make redundancies. If you can't move people around, then there's options with reducing staff hours. You could negotiate with your staff to see if they're willing to accept a lower amount of hours so that they don't lose their jobs. If you have to reduce their hours significantly though, then you could put them at risks to fall under the short-term working, which is where they then get a right. If they're on short-term working for 4 weeks, then they could actually ask you to make them redundant. And if you do make them redundant, or they force your hand to make them redundant, then there's actually, although it saves money in the long run because your payroll is lighter, it will actually have a bit of a cash problem at the beginning, because you've got to pay a statutory notice period and redundancy pay. So redundancy is good for long-term cash flow, but in the short term can be a very expensive thing to do. So it's something to tread lightly and take advice. I know Donna, our HR manager, has helped many of our clients, quite a few of our clients, more than we'd want, I'm sure, with treading the minefield of dealing with changing staff contracts, shortening hours, or, in some cases, sadly, helping them go down the route of making redundancies. So yeah, to tread lightly, but don't hide from it. It's something to be tackled as quick as possible, because it's only going to get more expensive and more problematic the longer you leave it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Josh. There was a question they said, how do I stop time wasters online, which I presume was a question to do with the marketing stuff. I think when people have got a lot more time on their hands, they will shop around a lot more. I think you just got to develop 1 or 2 questions really that you ask a potential customer. Maybe have some information that they can go away with. You don't want to be spending all your time on one person who's just asking you 50 questions and probably won't end up buying. But if you can give them something, a brochure, or direct them somewhere they can find out more information without you spending loads of time on it. That's a good answer. I noticed, how do I get my partner to take more responsibility? I'm assuming that is a business partner, and I'm hoping that that's not Josh or Emma that have put that question up. If some of you subscribe to our email newsletter, you might have seen my Friday night one last week where I talked about partnerships, and most partnerships don't work, and a lot of it is that they just don't have a proper, honest discussion with each other about who's responsible for what. Strategic planning session can be great for that. I've had some really interesting ones where just the question about where they see themselves in 2 years' time. I've had completely different answers. I mean, just could not be more different. So you've got these two people working together who are actually almost actively working against each other, even though they might not realise it. And it's important to have that frank conversation. A strategic planning session is a really good framework to do that in, because you've got a referee there who can stop things getting personal, whatever. So I think that's all of the questions. Just checking the time. We are finished 1 minute to 5. So amazing timing, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for attending the webinar. As I think Amanda will be just sending a few follow-up bits of information. But if you'd like to find out more about how we can help you, feel free to ping us an email. And have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks everyone, but feel free to get in touch.